every year.
There's a total disconnect now between the ruling group and the masses.
I hate psychology.
Clear out.
They're the same worm-like characters.
Analysts.
Fuck you with your stupid argument.
They should not bother us.
Democracy. All of this just works.
Vote for the generations who are coming.
Fully dynamic game engine.
A millennial video essayist.
All support, strength,
Constant craving.
and identity.
I haven't yearned. They are a disease of our time.
Clear them out. You're voting for what your grandfather and father fought for.
I sit and yearn.
Hello, one and all, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. Today we have a bit of a dual topic. We're going to start our show with resident co-host Ludwig Path. Welcome.
Thank you, and always nice to be back. Good evening and good night to our dear viewers. And we have also with us Call of Shield Maiden. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Now, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but you might be the second Australian we've had on our stream. You're Australian, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. So you're the second one, just behind Chris Gard. I'm not sure if the level of bants will be the same, but time will tell.
I don't think I have as big a character as he does.
And the reason that you're here today is to talk a bit about your magazine, the Corncrake Mag, that you have created, and of course, be part of the episode as usual. Anything else we need to cover before we get going, Ludwig Path? Well, I can just say this right now. The way it's looking right now is that next week there probably won't be a Longhouse episode because I will be away on holiday. And so far we haven't recorded anything in advance. So just a heads up. Okay, Ludwig Path, would you like to start with our coverage on Eurovision?
Yeah, I mean these weeks have been pretty nuts. Usually, if you're around on Twitter a lot, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. So, but as we've said previously, we want to try to focus on more like Eurocentric things on this show and not get too involved into American drama posting. And I think like the Eurovision Song Contest is a very kind of inherently Eurocentric thing, even though it's expanded quite a bit. So yeah, the Eurovision Song Contest went off last week. We talked about it on the previous stream. I mean, there's a lot of drama this time. I think more than usual. So there's certain things I had to sort of read up on to understand this, because it's not been anything of particular interest to me. I was watching Eurovision. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid. And then it's like as I got older, less interested in pop music, and the show got gayer progressively, I just kind of dropped out. And that seems to have been it's not just me, to be honest, but because of the intense politicization of the last Eurovision, there seems to have been a lot of people who have zoned in again, and there's been a bit of a shift in the audience. So I mean, just a couple of factoids first. The Eurovision 2024, that's the 68th actually consecutive edition. So this has been going since the 50s, within like an ever expanding range of countries, starting with just the European countries that were in like the Western American sphere. Because there's like, as I understand it, there's never been any sort of countries behind the Iron Curtain that was ever participating. This was always a very kind of like West, what you call an Anglo European type of event. And they've been running consecutively every year apart from 2020 because of COVID. This is one of the most popular non-sports TV events, and it's arranged and sort of held by the European Broadcasting Union. I mean, just like the EU, this is a sort of thing where I wish I could just look up the who owns this or who does this belong to, but it's just kind of like the same boring pan-European organization with just insane amounts of members, and it's difficult to figure out who exactly does what. And reading up on it, so I mean, it's supposed to be like this kind of pan-European globalizing project. That's what it's thought out to be, as sort of apolitical as possible, and the countries can come there and compete, and promote their own cultures. I guess that's the sort of the point. It's a little bit like the people talk about the Miss Universe competition, that it's really sort of a it's like immigration advertisements.
Sure. And there's some money to be made sort of locally in the country as well in the run up to it. Like you're holding an internal competition as well.
And that's still kind of the still a function of the to the Eurovision, that these countries who come on can market themselves and try to sell their viewpoints. But I mean, this Eurovision was just particularly politicized for a couple of reasons. I mean, after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, then Russia has just been banned from Eurovision. They started entering in the 90s after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and now they're banned again. So then the question is, if we take that for granted, we talked about boycotts previously. The question from a lot of people, especially the people who watch this stuff, is like, why isn't Israel also banned?
Exactly.
Given the things that are going on in Gaza currently, and this made things difficult. This year it was hosted in Malmö, Sweden, and that's the custom with Eurovision, is that the country who wins the previous contest. So I mean, Sweden won in 2023, so it's going to be hosted in Sweden. Malmö is known notoriously as one of these high immigration laden cities in Sweden, and the type of immigrants, it's not Spaniards or Italians, it's mostly Arab
people with a vested interest in the Israel-Palestine conflict.
So I mean, that's part of the reason that they had to have heightened security on this event, because they were worried about the safety of the Israeli contestant and the crew that came with the Israeli contestant.
Not only that, the police in Malmö, I think we covered last week, did advise people of Jewish descent to stay away from the festivities.
Yes, there have been reports about like large movements of Jews that just had to leave town for that event because they were worried about blowback or something that was going to happen. So it's already getting very heated. There were protests going on. As far as I know, there was no like dramatic escalation. Nobody got killed in these protests, but there's a lot of weird stuff that's been happening inside of the competition itself. So I mean, what we've seen is that many of the countries who participated, or when I say the countries, I mean like the actual artists and the crews around the artists, were sort of insisted on Israel being disqualified. I think as many as 17 of the 30-something member countries just sort of insisted that Israeli would be disqualified. There was also a question about the Israel being able to participate at all, because the content of the music is not supposed to have any political connotation. So the Israeli contestant, her name is Eden Golan, and her song was called October Rain. That's sort of in remembrance of October the 7th, the Hamas attacks, but it had to be changed to Hurricane, and then have the lyrics changed to be something non-political, something like something more kind of love story-ish, but none of that really changes anything. The kind of thin veneer of neutrality of the event is just really difficult to maintain. See,
we have a chat here from Jorsa who says that Norwegian and Danish police forces was called in to support the Swedish police in Malmö. That's interesting.
Yeah, so there wasn't enough, right? That's pretty ridiculous. I wonder, like, the extra costs of this, if this is something that's covered by the government, or the bill must have been huge, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
you were talking about, sort of the neutrality of the competition.
Yeah, this is it's just proven sort of impossible to maintain. I mean, there are sort of two aspects to the Eurovision in how these winners are selected. There's the audience's voting part. That is like every country gets to have a certain amount of votes. That is weight. I think they get 12 points that they can sort of distribute around with the contestants. I mean, it's interesting because it really does privilege small countries over big ones. We talked about the EU and how the EU kind of weighs seats in the parliament.
The
With
other way,
Eurovision,
yeah.
it's sort of like if you're Cyprus or something, or some kind of small tax haven country, you get the same amounts of points as Germany or France.
Yeah.
So it really does seem to favor the opinions of these smaller countries. But there's also a sort of an expert panel of judges in that is selected. I think there's like 5 people from each country that have to sit and agree on who is going to win. So it's going to be weighed then between like what the people want and what the quote unquote experts want. I'll send you a link in the chat because there's a sort of scoreboard site on that you can see on the Eurovision
Sure.
.tv.
One moment here.
I mean, there
Now,
it
of
allowed
course,
people to.
Shield Maiden, feel free to chime in if you have any comments to this.
Is Australia even a member in this?
No,
Sure.
Yeah, they are. They are in it. But I was wanting to know if Palestine, do they have someone in Eurovision too? Is that
No, because
considered a
Palestine
country?
is not part of Europe.
Not-
That's the reasoning.
Oh, no,
It's
it's,
Australia.
Yeah, I know. No, I don't know what the requirements to
they're
become
not
part of Eurovision
I mean, the thing is,
You
like
have
Palestine is
you
not
have to be-
even acknowledged
Yeah,
as
you
a
have to-
state. That's the thing.
fair enough.
that-
Yeah,
It's still up in the air with the UN. Is that that's where they were running a vote to actually acknowledge Palestine as a separate state or not? But currently,
Yes.
it's not even seen as a international. It's not even acknowledged as an actual
Mhm.
place. So, or at least like a legal state with everything that implies.
But there has been things like this before with Eurovision. There's been like with Macedonia and various sort of smaller countries in Eastern Europe, like whether or not they were considered, real
Yeah.
countries at a certain point. So
Exactly. I didn't even know this, but like Kosovo is basically a sort of country like only half
Yeah.
the world kind of acknowledges
Yeah,
that Kosovo is a real
exactly.
place,
Yeah,
and the other half
Yeah.
is just like, meh, no, it's not. It's not even real. So there's a lot of fun to be had with geopolitics. Let's take a look at this list here. I
but of
think if you
course,
scroll,
everyone's favorite nation, Israel, has been part of it.
yeah,
whom
they
we
came in. I
love
think
here at the Longhouse. By the
yeah,
way.
of course we do love Israel, and so does the European right.
Not
apparently.
as much as someone. We'll see that in a moment. There's someone who loves Israel even more than us. So
If you scroll up a little bit, there is a sort of
How does the
drop-down menu.
scoreboard work? It's just confusing me.
No, currently it's like it shows the result of every country. You can sort of see how people. You can see, okay, this is how Albania voted.
yeah,
They gave 12 points to Croatia, 10 to Israel, 10 to Italy, and
this
and
is
8 to-
this
yeah.
is the people. The people gave 10. The people of Albania gave 10 points to Israel, but the expert panel gave 10 points to Italy. Right? They gave no points to Israel. So you do
And-
get some if you go to like Sweden, for example. Often we will do like brother votes essentially, where you like the Norwegians will, because you can't vote for your own country, so you'll vote for like Sweden, and Sweden will vote for Norway, right?
Yeah, at least this was my understanding when I was watching Eurovision in the 90s, early 2000s, and the adults explained it to me, is that you have typical patterns about countries next to each other, that if they have friendly relations, they will vote for each other, very likely. And so it's there's a slight predictability there. But that kind of went out the window here, because as you're seeing here, it's like there's a weird pattern going on where you're seeing Israel is just on the top of every... it doesn't matter. Just look through some of these countries. You're going to see like 12 points for Israel when it comes to the televoters on almost every. Probably not Ireland, but I'm going to share a little interesting
Austrians
graphic
can
here.
make up their mind.
They never can.
Cyprus is voting for Greece. That's a brother vote, probably. What is Denmark voting for? Israel and Croatia and Ukraine. What did Sweden vote for? Sweden votes for Norway.
Can we
They
see what
didn't
Australia
vote that
voted
much
for?
Let's check what Australia voted for. Australia voted for Israel, followed by Croatia. So
I shared another link there to a tweet with an interesting chart that shows Israel support kind of on the
Norway
map.
apparently can make make it either. It's Ukraine and then everyone else, apparently. Yes, you shared a tweet. Let's bring that up. I'm going to open Twitter. Just live. That's always difficult. Let's see here. Okay, so countries that gave Israel 10 plus points in the Eurovision 2024. The entire people of Europe are against the pro-Palestinian jihadist mob. They deserve better leaders who reflect their voices. And then this graphic here, which highlights all of the countries that gave Israel 10 or more points.
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting because I was sitting on Twitter when this was happening, and what I think a lot of people saw is the kind of, because I follow a lot of pro-Israel people, like sort of Zionist people in Norway that are either related to the Friends for Israel organization, or like, no, it's called For Israel.
Can I bring the guy up for a moment?
Yeah, do so.
Because he is the editor of one of the most, I would say, hardcore Christian papers in Norway. He voted 20 times for Israel, which is the maximum amount of times you're allowed to vote by spending money. And it says here that he was typing for his life, and I think he got his wife to vote 20 times as well. So this guy voted the hardest for Israel. He's the top, Israel's top guy.
Israel's top guy, but there's a lot of Israel's top guys here. Because you see, there was a kind of demographic shift in this contest where the original audience, like the sort of pan-European liberals, Pride supporters, who usually watch Eurovision, because it's like in the later years, it's become a very kind of Pride-heavy event, especially because it's happening during the summer, and like they've had,
what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, this is typical stuff you're going to see in this competition. So they made the choice to boycott the event. And you could see it in articles that describe the viewership numbers. I don't have like a good statistics overview over it, but at least the news sources that I've read claim that there's been a drop in viewership. But of course, the loss in kind of the standard viewership was compensated by a kind of increased viewership by the Israel's top guys. And this seems to have been,
the people who usually don't watch Eurovision was really watching Eurovision this year.
Yeah, they wanted to.
Carl Habermas paid us some dollary dues. Is this Canadian dollars? $5 Canadian. Rami Bommins, Lawrence Fox, and the anti-immigrant squad dropped everything to tell you that Israel's contestants is the ones you should vote for. So.
Yeah, this was a coordinated effort. I mean, you can't say anything else. Every influencer that I saw that sort of moderately pro-Israel on Twitter, at least, were sending out the signal that you're going to watch this and you're going to vote. You get 20 votes. That's how it works, and you're just kind of sending a number to a sort of an SMS, for example, and they charge it to your SIM card. And I mean, as long as you have one SIM card, then you can vote 20 times. I mean, if you buy more SIM cards, say if you have 3 phones, then you could probably get 60 votes. So I assume there's been a lot of that as well.
And even if you get it comped by your work's basically paying for you to vote for Israel. And then there's tax breaks on this. So this is, everyone wins. Like, everyone is rubbing their hands here.
It's very low effort. If you can organize people to do this, then it's very easy. It doesn't require much sacrifice, or you're not putting yourself in danger. Your identity won't be shared or anything. You're just going to sit in the safety of your home and vote for Israel. And I think they're not in the majority, but you're seeing here kind of what the organized minority can do on like a very pan-European basis, because they are not in the majority in Europe, but the Israel supporters are organized, and they're quite dedicated in their mission.
They are, in elite theory sense, a bit of an organized minority, albeit not very interested in doing anything directly political. Carl Habermas says, skinhead Daz bringing it home for Israel because Tommy told him this is how we save England.
Yes, I mean, this it was a very interesting event, and I've argued on Twitter that I think Israel got exactly what it wanted out of this. I don't know to the degree to which actual Israeli influence was involved here, but I would not be surprised if they encouraged this or sent a signal out. Sorry, I'm breathing a bit heavy. I've had some of the daycare sniffles recently, so I have to
Good
there's
stuff.
a lot of talking. I have to just catch my breath in between all the babbling.
No worries. So, I mean, so with this whole sort of Golem Brigade, as someone in the chat called them, out in force, there seems to have still been some backlash to this whole thing.
Yes, I mean,
even from sort of within. I mean, we've talked about this before with the whole sort of resurgence of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Is that Israel, as a political entity, is finding that a lot of the people who are now staffing places like the what's the name in the U.S., the Department of for the Foreign Affairs, essentially. I forget what it's
State
called.
Department.
The State Department, yes. A lot of the people who are staffing that no longer really buy into the things that they sort of bred the boomers on, right? Because they're all growing up to be shitlibs who are really into Palestine. And that
Yes,
seems to be happening even, and you shared an article with me about people in state media in Norway, like young people who are working as reporters, basically refusing to cover anything about Eurovision.
Yeah. There's been refusals to cover it. There's been I mean, many of the contestants who talked about they wanted to leave the competition. Many of them did not show up to rehearsal. That was one of the things. I guess some of the most kind of outspoken characters here. The Barbie Thug was Ireland's contestant, right? I don't know if you can get up a picture, but she's been one of the headline makers because she's running this sort of LGBTQ pagan black metal pop type image, right?
Oh wow, what the hell is this? Yeah, let me just one moment.
I mean, it's not uncommon for Eurovision. I remember, it's really edgy stuff. If you look at this stuff,
well, it's not even. That's the weird thing, though. It's like it's edgy, but it's in that, as you said, it's in that like LGBT edgy. Do you see what I'm saying? It's that like safe edgy, if I can call it that.
Yeah, well, they've. I think the LGBTQ community have sort of co-opted a lot of, just like the rainbow. They also co-opted a lot of this kind of spooky imagery. So they're using. I mean, this is sort of horror movie cliche stuff like scary clowns and the Hellraiser stuff, which is, I mean, it's not really off. I don't know if they're even co-opting it, considering that a lot of that stuff was made by gay people to begin with, or it's either sort of inspired by gay fetishist kind of let's say like S&M subculture, so these kind of weird subcultures that these people are into. But yeah, the Barbie Thug woman was very loudly sort of anti-Israel, sort of demanded that that Israel would be disqualified. The Netherlands contestant Joost Klein was one of them. He was suspended from the competition because of an altercation with a journalist. And I mean, the details are not out yet, but a lot of people suspect that this had something to do with his aggression towards the. At least there was an episode where he was getting aggressive with the Israeli contestant in terms of getting her to talk more about the situation in.
Interesting.
Sorry, the situation in Gaza. So I mean, this is very bad for Joost Klein because in my opinion, he was sort of the natural winner of this competition. I mean, Switzerland won because of overwhelming jury favoritism.
Sure.
But,
do you think that might have been a bit on purpose?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
if the popular vote was organized one way, maybe the jury vote was organized another way. Right?
It was. I don't have the tweet here, but they had like the Norwegian Zionists. They were sharing around the names of the jurors, right? And one of the jurors had a TikTok where it was like the standard Sumer guy with the broccoli haircut, and he was talking about, they told me the European Broadcasting Union that I was supposed to be neutral and leave politics aside, but the Israel-Palestine stuff was just so important to me that I couldn't, do anything. So you're seeing with the jury, it's kind of the other way around. It's really, they avoided, there was like no votes for Israel. So Israel was like the second favorite with the televoters, with Croatia winning the top spot. I mean, the Croatian song was actually a little bit catchy as well, but there, I saw on Twitter that there was like this last minute push from the lefties to get Croatia sort of over the top because they're realizing that, shit, Israel might win. So they had to really try to rally the forces to vote for Croatia, and I think they succeeded. Which, I mean, for me, it wasn't really that much of a success. I made this comment that I think this event was a sort of soft power win for Israel, and it's rare because they've just taken soft power losses all the way since October 7th. Every attempt that they've done on writing articles or making appeals to Holocaust or persecution or something, it's just fallen flat. But this event, they were able to sort of show up with this contestant that was like a pretty woman who seemed normal, who had a song that was kind of non-edgy and well presented. And she became like the sort of underdog audience favorite, got second place if you consider the televoters, and did not become a finalist because of the sort of biased jurors. So you have the narrative here that the Israel is popular among the masses. Like the populist choice is Israel in Europe. And Israel is normal and sane, while the kind of anti-Israel brigade is queer and insane.
This is a very strange world to live in.
But I mean, that's, if you're, for whatever reason, if you're not politically engaged, if you're just sort of watching the Eurovision, like, I don't know why you wouldn't, but for the people who are not terminally online into this stuff and haven't looked at all these angles.
I don't give a shit about Eurovision. So,
yeah, exactly.
Do you mean like the Israel stuff or like the Palestine stuff?
But the Palestine and the Israel stuff and the Ukraine thing as well. I think, of course, if October 7th never happened, then Ukraine would have won likely. I think that would have also been been a very political decision. But like, there was no mainstream newspaper that was covering the Israel angle, even though there's a lot of evidence that the coordinated voting was taking place on political grounds. But because the mainstream has not acknowledged this, that it just sort of means that you have to take it at face value that Israel was the people's choice. And
that sounds so strange. Like, I can't think of, like, it's anecdotal, right? Obviously, but I don't know anyone who has these strong feelings for Israel, and I live in an area with a lot of these people who have strong feelings for Israel, like in support of Israel. But there can't be that many in Europe who has such like fiery passion for this thing, right?
Well, there aren't, but they give that impression, right? I mean, we talked about Erik Selle, the guy who's the head of the Norwegian Christian Conservative Party.
Yeah,
he is
eternal reminder that he has won the top Goy prize.
Yeah, he has an actual prize for basically promoting Israel to African leaders most of his life. Very interesting.
Like a specific prize for being a non-Jewish person promoting Israel in the world. That's what he's got.
Yes, but when I see him on these sort of conservative or these alt media podcasts, he's always running the narrative for Israel that Israel is sort of like the silent majority actually supports Israel, but they're too scared because of like Muslim protesters or something. They're scared of being outed because they're seeing these sort of crazy frenetic.
That sounds very weird, but
I think so too.
So he's arguing that it's racism by proxy, essentially.
Yes, they're just sort of too scared to say it. They're scared because they're being.
The population is actually right-wing pro-Israel.
Yeah, that's the narrative that he's running, right? And this
That's
kind of
insane.
supports that. If you're not actually debunking that narrative, so that's why I think that Israel walked away here as the winner. Because alternatively, if Israel had won, or the jury had gone for Israel, then you'd get the impression that it's kind of the opposite. It's sort of the established elites actually want to promote Israel in spite of what the people want or something. Or if Israel had gotten 0 points, that would have also been crushing, right? Because it just sort of confirms that nobody supports Israel. But because you get this narrative that the populace wants Israel to win, the elites don't want Israel to win. The elites are out of touch. And I mean, because the alternative, let's say if they had won, that it doesn't just mean that they win the competition. There would have probably been a chimp out, I think, in Malmö because of it. Because I mean,
I do understand that you're sort of walking on eggshells here, in a way. But
yeah,
I mean, this has to be I cannot believe that this isn't in some way fortified in order to create the least offensive outcome, right?
Yeah,
I think on both sides here.
because if Israel wins, that's also not just the chimp out implications, but they would have to host the next Eurovision in Jerusalem, which would have been even more
Which would have been
controversial. Yeah.
insane, yeah.
So it's almost a blessing for them to not have to do this. I don't know what Israel would even look like in 1
Then
year.
if we
considering
war
the
game
state of
this,
things.
war game this in a sense where, let's say, Israel pushed incredibly hard on the populist side to get votes, and then pushed equally as hard on the jury side to get people who were against Israel in order to, because if you're Israel, not winning and not being thrown out is kind of like the best outcome. Like this outcome is the best outcome for Israel,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely, this is a huge soft power win for Israel, and like the first one they've had in a long time. But aside from what actually went down there, I've been sort of looking around on Twitter and trying to cover the narratives that people are running on there, and of course the standard kind of lib view there, or the kind of like Eurocentric view, is that Israel shouldn't be in the contest to begin with. Boycotts are legitimate. The event itself is not legitimate. I mean, I posted this article in the media channel, I think, where they talked about the amount of people who were, sending complaints in to.
Oh yes.
The European
would you like
Broadcasting Union.
to? Would you like me to bring it up?
Yeah, you should do that and maybe read a little bit of it.
Sure. I just need to translate it first, and then I'll bring it up. Okay. I think this is the one. This is the one, right?
Yep. No.
Okay.
Maybe. But let me take a look here. That seems to have a different picture. Is this from TV2, or is
No.
it?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I have that open in a different.
Yeah. No,
different
that
tab.
was the one.
Just give me a moment.
Yep.
Let's see here. So this is on the Eurovision Song Contest. The number of complaints to the Eurovision organizer continues to increase, and at the same time, the Dutch broadcaster comes up with new startling information. Do you want me to read the ChatGPT case summary? Or should I read the actual article? Okay. So 16 out of 37 countries have reacted negatively to this year's Eurovision Song Contest, with crisis meetings, criticisms, and formal complaints. Dutch newspapers have made a shocking revelation. Dutch delegation reported an unsafe atmosphere in the arena just before Joost Klein allegedly threatened a photographer. A photograph in progress, I think. Yeah. It's not only the Netherlands that has made complaints. Other countries' participants have found it traumatic to perform on the same stage as Israel. Interesting. Criticism of the Eurovision Song Contest increases with concerns about the artist's treatment and potential negative effect on future recruitment. Let me just double check. Yeah. Complaints and double standards regarding the treatment of Israel's and the Netherlands' participations have created controversy and demands for a cleanup. So are they saying that a pan-European organization is corrupt? That's a bold stance.
Interesting.
So, do you want me to read some more details for this?
Yeah, you can keep going. There was some interesting stuff in there.
TV2 has counted that 16 out of 37. Oh, let me zoom in for a bit here. Have been in crisis meetings, expressed themselves critically, or submitted formal complaints regarding this year's Eurovision Song Contest. Behind the scenes, participants report that they felt unsafe, traumatized, and they considered withdrawing. The skyrocketing number of broadcasters who have expressed criticism of the ESC prompts experts to react. Quote, "It hurts my heart to hear how difficult it has been for several of the artists in this year's Eurovision, both in the run-up and during their stay in Malmö. I'm afraid that the poor treatment of the artists will lead to less recruitment of artists for the next year's Eurovision," says Martin Philip Fjallinger to TV2. Fjallinger is the founder of the Eurovision Norway fan site, which is apparently enough to be counted an expert, I assume, which reaches tens of thousands of people. Many of the complaints are about how the situation surrounding Israel's participation have been for the artists, and how the Dutch artist Joost Klein was treated when he was banned. The latest development... Oh, this guy... It's a look. Okay. The latest development in this case is that the Dutch broadcaster Avrotros is said to have complained about an unsafe atmosphere in Malmö Arena even before Joost Klein was banned. That's what the newspaper NU writes. Quote, the fact that the Netherlands filed a complaint about the conditions in Malmo before the incident in question should have taken place is very thought-provoking. Many of the delegations must have reported very stressful and unpleasant working conditions in Malmo, says Fjellinger. Let's see here. The Norwegian Gote has stated that it seemed that the rules only applied to some, while others escaped, highlighting the situation with Netherlands and Israel. Funny that. The EBU, which is what?
European Broadcasting Union. They're the organization that hosts Eurovision.
Okay, thank you. Has given little information on why they banned Joost Klein, but said it was about threatening behavior and they have zero tolerance for this. The Dutch delegation has said that Joost Klein was only trying to wave off a tired camera woman. Joost Klein is said to have said that he did not want to be filmed, but he was filmed anyway, according to the Dutch broadcaster. Do you know exactly, is there a video of something he said spicy?
Well, there isn't. There's really no concise information about this that's been published, so I will not speculate. But it was a confirmed incident where he was aggressive towards the Israeli contestant. So people are thinking that he was banned because of that. But again, I can't confirm that either. But it probably didn't help.
Question. One comment here from Pepe Sells, but who's buying, says these Norwegians are right before the wrongs. I don't know if he's talking about us. Israel shouldn't be in any European competition, period, because they're not Europeans. Well, that's my stance as well, but I don't really care about Eurovision. But yes, I would say that if I hosted a European song contest, I wouldn't have Israel in it. To be fair, Australia is also in it, but you can make the argument that it's English heritage.
Well, there's not some kind of Eurocentric view to this. I think it's they've just sort of expanded.
No, there's no official official stance. I'm just saying I would agree with what Pepe is saying.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe in the first, I think maybe you'd make that argument in the 60s or the 70s or something, they would agree with you.
Yeah, it's too late.
I mean, it's been going outside of Europe, I think, since the 90s. So we're a little bit beyond that point.
All right. So this was not respected. This led to threatening movement from Jews towards the camera. Ooh, threatening movement. He did not touch the camera woman. This incident was reported and followed by an investigation by the EBU and the police. Fjellinger points out that the Israeli delegation has received complaints that they've been persistent and rude to artists. This is that soft power we keep hearing about, right?
Yep.
It's the content I use the word chutzpah, which is what a lot of people are talking with a lot of the stuff that's been going on with Israel and Palestine is it's the soft power, but it doesn't feel very soft power when it's all about just insulting and browbeating people and threatening them, right? It feels a bit more mafioso.
Well, it's not. That's the case that I'm making. This is not soft power at all. This is hard power. I mean, if you're coercing people, it's not soft power. Soft power is if people like you, they do what you want.
Interesting.
And this is just not the case at all. But I think you read enough of the article to get the point through. So I'm just going to try to finish up the kind of Eurovision retrospective here with because this is the Euro narrative, right? They talked about this. This this huge struggle trying to get Israel out of this competition because of the Gaza situation, and a lot of these artists the Joost Klein, who in my opinion he was primed to win. I mean, his song is the most streamed song on Spotify, right? He has gotten the most attention. And it seemed sort of to be their version of Gangnam Style or something. It was sort of made in this comedic fashion, radio friendly play and everything.
Right.
So, in under normal circumstances, I think he would have won, but he was disqualified. A lot of the other people faced pushback, because you have to imagine that if you're just a careerist, right, you don't care about these politics, but these artists apparently are quite deeply committed to the Palestinian cause. I mean, you have to say this for the left, at least. They've shown a remarkable commitment to this stuff that's sort of beyond a lot of what you're seeing on the right. And there's been this kind of tendency to just talk about the kind of state-sanctioned protests and the what do you call it, like the Wall Street BlackRock sanctioned left,
Right.
who are only
Yeah.
they're only sort of punching down or with power. I mean, if you're getting to this point where these people are putting themselves on fire and dying to protest this stuff, you can't really make that argument anymore. I feel
That's fair.
it goes a little bit beyond just trying to push in the same direction that power is pushing.
People in the comments are reporting that Juiced allegedly blinked 14 times and breathed 88 at the camera woman.
Very likely, yeah.
Yes, that's the gesture that was made.
So, but, I mean, that's the lib narrative, the sort of conservative right narrative, the kind of Western Zionist narrative is that Eurovision is basically it's degenerate, right? They don't like it, and this is fair too, because it's become more of this kind of the nudity in the show was quite surprising to me. It seems to have sort of escalated quite a lot in, saying, like the last 5-10 years. I don't remember it being this bad the last time I checked in, but a lot of people are sort of using more nudity and more kind of shock, edgy stuff that's going on. I mean, the winner, like the Swiss contestant, also has some kind of like non-binary type identity. It wasn't totally clear. He's just a twink, really, but you have to put some kind of pastel color flag label on it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it was degenerate, but at least Israel wins, right? That's the kind of Tommy Robinson narrative to this show, and we've shown we've owned the libs by voting for Israel, and then like you have the kind of Russophile, the Sigger narrative that people like Nick Griffin is running. That it's sort of Eurovision Song Contest is basically worse than a combination of Weimar Germany and Sodom and Gomorrah at the same time. And like the Russians should go from tactical nukes to strategic nukes, and just invade Europe as fast as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think I'm kidding with this stuff, but if you're looking at some of these kind of pro-Russian accounts, or these kind of more kind of CTARD accounts on the dissident right and in that space, that's kind of the only angle they're interested in. It's like, this is a degenerate event. It's sort of God should just flood the earth because of this, and the West has no legitimacy because this is like worse than 5 Holocausts or something. Which is interesting with Nick Griffin, because we talked previously about the Christian-Muslim alliance. And these concepts and guys like that have been some of the top guys in fronting the idea that Christians in the West should ally with Muslims against Zionists, right? Because it's sort of expedient politically. They have similar values, and the Muslims don't really want to be here anyway. So if we can just get the Zionists out, if we can just focus on...
What do you mean they don't want to be here anyway?
No. It's just raining here and cold and everything, so they're just waiting to get back.
They could just go home.
Well, it's the gay wars, right? That's stopping them from going home.
Okay.
And
Sure.
the based brown elites who care about their own people don't accept them for some reason. I don't know why that is in that Russophile narrative that like the elites in these other countries are based and they care about their own people, and they don't accept the refugees back. But
Carl Habermas says it's pretty cold. Well, it's cold, and in the way I like it, it's been like 20 degrees for the past week, and it's almost been too much.
It's been really hot where I live. But
I don't do well in the heat.
I find it so interesting that they're just running the kind of, okay, this is degenerate narrative, when they've promoted allying with Muslims. They're basically saying that, okay, we can look through our fingers when it comes to Muslim crime or rape gangs or something like this, and because the real enemy is the Zionists. So we have to, work with Muslims. But when it comes to this stuff, when you're getting like people in these kind of monster outfits or thongs or these kind of libs who are dancing on stage and cross-dressing and who are like staunch anti-Zionist, it's basically just bomb the whole thing. Russia should just invade. And I mean, this is what I'm sort of talking about with this kind of Russian propaganda angles, because they will ignore other anti-Zionists when it doesn't fit with the Russian narrative, in a sense. The Christian Muslim thing is just kind of a Eurasian thing. It's not really something that's universally applied. But yeah, enough about that. I'm going to, like I said, I'll probably do a stream about the kind of general Russian e-right narratives in the future.
You've been building up to it in our private chat, and I suppose on the Longhouse for a while. Yeah,
it's coming in the future, but I think we're just going to round off Eurovision here, and I think I've covered most of the interesting parts. But maybe we could
All
go
right.
on to Call of Shield Maiden and something more uplifting.
Let's go on to something a bit more uplifting and enjoyable, because I've been reading Corncrake Magazine, a magazine about English literature for a while, and that's been very nice. And of course, Call of the Shield Maiden, you are, would you call it the creator or the editor or of this magazine?
Oh, well, I do both of those things.
Both of those things. All right.
Yeah.
So, I actually want to start a little bit talking about you. I want to talk about. Well, I want to ask about yourself for a moment. We usually ask. This is the famous question we ask: is sort of tell us your red pill story. If you want to do that, how did you end up here?
It's kind of well, you could put it down, if in short it would probably be the, what is it they call it the Benjamin to alt-right pipeline. That's the short
Sure.
story.
All right, let's hear the long story.
Okay, is that the more interesting one? Well, I was raised Amish. Obviously, that's very, very conservative. They don't do politics, but they are, very conservative in every way. And then when I left home as a young adult, I got into radical feminism. And then I found it was very stressful being on their Facebook pages and everything, because they're sharing every single story of male violence from every newspaper all around the world, which is, stressful to scroll through all of that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that leads to some terminally online behavior, I assume.
But it's just
you
like,
walk around
imagine,
feeling that every man is gonna, I can't say the word because YouTube is going to shut us down, but they're gonna. Was the word grape people use?
well, I never feared that. Obviously, there's men in my life, and so I never went so far as to the hate all men thing, because I simply observed the men in my own life. But it was more, the stress of it was more seeing article after article of the worst examples. I don't want to go into graphic detail, but I'm sure you can imagine. And
someone
not,
in chat is saying it's like a femcel forum. Is that accurate?
They're not femcells, because a lot of them are married. They do have children. Like Posey Parker, I don't think she identifies as a feminist anymore, but like someone like her, obviously she's married and with kids. I actually learned about Tommy Robinson and his, the gang situation here in England through them, because that's the thing about radical feminists. While they are leftists, they're not, because they have a belief in biological reality. So I just think that, like, I kind of went off of politics for a few years, because I think the fact rad fems, and I got caught up in that meant I didn't go all the way woke, because rad fems are all about biological reality, while often other feminist groups are not. So after I was off feminism for a few years, COVID came, and I was in Australia and not vaccinated. And it wasn't the greatest. Like, I wasn't in Victoria. I think they had the worst lockdowns in the whole world. But I was in a state that had vaccine mandates, and it's not a great feeling to go walking past a shop and seeing a sign on the door that says, if you don't get vaccinated, you won't. If you can't show proof of vaccination, you won't be admitted. And I was even listening to the radio, and they have some, like in the ad section, they'll have some man on with a big deep voice, and he'll very directly say, if you don't get vaccinated, there will be consequences. And it goes on to list all the places you'll be excluded from. And like, I got onto a bus a few different times, and I didn't wear my mask, and I literally got shouted at by the bus driver. Like, in any other situation, some like big 40-year-old bus driver shouting at you would not be deemed appropriate, but somehow suddenly that was a thing. So, I had to put up with all of that. And that kind of changed my whole view of the world, because I thought I was living in a free country. The West is great. But suddenly you see all that and are aware of I had to be. It kind of forced me to be aware
the
of
sort of
politics
power
again.
structure shifted quite radically, or became quite apparent, right?
Well, maybe it was always trending in that direction, but I didn't notice it. But COVID forced me to.
Yeah.
And then I found online different podcasts that were supportive of not being vaccinated, and just hearing, because like a lot of my family are not vaccinated, but just hearing that there's other people out there who aren't supportive of lockdowns and all that, that was a good thing. And the podcast of the Lotus Eaters was one of those. And things have just continued.
The dawn
from
of
that
Swindon
point,
claims another victim. Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. All right. So how did that end up sort of as a magazine? Or before we do that, let's define what the magazine is. How about that? If you can tell us a bit about what, in your words, what is Corncrake Magazine?
Well, I mean, to put it short, it's a literature magazine. But to me, I want it to be full of wholesome and thought-provoking stories, because everything, a lot of stuff on the right is all politics. I mean, so that's kind of okay, but there should be culture and things to support a culture to go along with that. So that's kind of part of why I created it. But the other part of it was inspiration from my childhood with the Amish, because they provide absolutely everything to their children. So the children do not grow up and leave, because they have everything that they need in their community. And that includes entertainment. It's not just go to church, but then you're on your own. They
Right.
provide everything.
Yeah.
So this is part of that, because like right now, a lot of the creative arts are very, very, leftist and political.
Certainly,
So I have my strict rules for the Corncrake in regards to, the politics and morals, just to try and make sure that it doesn't, because it's just so easy to make everything political these days, and I don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want it to just be sort of like a preachy type of magazine, I suppose. I do understand what you're getting at. It's something that Fen de Villiers talked about in his speech at the Witten last year. How, the you attended as well, of course. How the arts really need to sort of bring us to the next level, in a sense, when it comes to influence and just expression, right? We can't just sit around theorizing about politics. There has to be something kind of vitality, and that has to come from culture. Very good. So you have a lot of contributors in the magazines that are out so far. Is there, I guess the hope here is that there's going to be sort of like a revolving, almost stable of contributors?
If people are passionate about writing and they want to write for every magazine, like Liquid Swan has been doing so far. Before I had the first, I asked him if he could write for it, because someone suggested his political writings kind of gave off the impression he could write fiction. So I asked him, and before I even printed the first magazine, he had like 3 or 4 stories submitted already. So like someone like him, yeah, he was so enthused. So someone like him, it's like, yeah, his stories are going to be published in every single magazine, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But then if there's someone out there who just wants to write a one-off thing or publish more, I don't know, sporadically, I'm okay with that as well.
Right. So in terms of content, for anyone who hasn't read this, sort of being an English literature magazine, are we talking that it's stories mostly submitted by other people, or do you feature sort of highlights from broadly speaking English lit as well? Because I've seen there's some, the latest one, I think it's the Eric Sand story is in there from Lovecraft. Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand?
Yeah. So yeah, he's in there. No, that is the story in there. Yeah. So
okay,
like English literature, kind of in the strict sense, means anything from, like, I think it's the Anglo-Saxon up until now, and it includes anyone who's born in England or was in England and moved abroad. So it's a very broad definition, but for me it means literature that is supporting English culture. I want to make sure people in England like the magazine before I care about
anyone
whether
else,
or not people in Antarctica like it, you know.
Yeah,
but I think
sense.
there's a lot of stuff written, like Australian literature and Canadian literature isn't technically English literature, but to me it's like, you know, the people who would be interested in the Corncrake are going to be people who don't have beef with being a colony or a former colony. So putting literature from those places, those countries in is fine. And obviously England is closely connected to any country that had Vikings in them, and people like stories about them. That's actually what Liquid Swan first wrote about, some Icelandic sagas he wrote. So yeah, it's really anything. So yeah, I suppose at the end of the day, if you really want to boil it down and be too technical, not every story is English literature, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's not precisely English literature that is of interest to English readers. So I put it in the magazine. Sure. And yeah.
No, it's. I mean, I can definitely feel, you know, if it's not expressly definable, it's quite easy to pick up on the sort of the feel of what the core of the magazine is here, right? Even though it might not be technically English lit, right? And I think it's something I found, which is, it annoys me that this actually sort of ignited a bit of a passion in me, is just the ability to be able to look forward to something. Like, say, if I'm reading your submissions on, is it the Druid story?
Druid Without a Home. Yeah.
Druid Without a Home, yes. Being able to sort of read the first issue of that story, right? And then having to wait to get the next one and sort of think about, I wonder what's going to happen, right? It's something that I actually haven't felt in a long time, which is, you know, saying something about me. I need to probably look at how easily accessible my content is in a day-to-day basis and do something about it. But that's very nice to sort of recognize, Call of the Shield Maiden is back, this one with her stories, or as you said, Liquid Swan is continuing this story this week, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. So that's been something very nice about the magazine. Sure, but it's more bingeable these days.
That's true.
I don't like that. I find that this magazine format in that sense has been a positive sort of way of enjoying this content. But to not sort of say it's all about literature.
Google Docs, you can binge too. No, I was going to say, if you break into my Google Docs, you can binge too.
Sure, but that's the fun part, right? Not having to binge, being able to, you know, enjoy the uncertainty for a bit, enjoy the expectation, and look forward to something. Of course, there's in the latest issue was something I also really enjoyed. For anyone who isn't convinced, was an interview with an artist who draws some phenomenal art, very sort of Anglo-Saxon, very Nordic inspired. I think the way he draws things reminds me of some of the Norwegian wood carvings. So there's not just, you know, short stories and literature in that sense. There's also just culture in general, it seems.
He actually works on the magazine, and
he does.
He does other work for Beowulf as well, like website designing and stuff. So.
That makes sense, because I felt like I've seen that before. Very good.
Because he actually designed the layout of the Corncrake website, and he goes through each issue with me before it's printed, just to make sure that the pictures are the right pixelation and are not blurry, all that stuff.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So, just for anyone who's wondering, we're going a bit back and forth here, but I just want to be clear. This is open for anyone to contribute to. Like if I had something I wanted to get off my chest in that sense, I could submit on your website.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right, very good. So you sort of answered the question as well. I was going to ask if it's a big operation, but if you have an artist on hand, I assume you have other people as well helping you out creating this, because I've been very impressed with the quality.
I have a story editor as well. He's actually published in Praxarchy, like his own work. But yeah, like he's good because he really appreciates and respects that everyone has their own unique writing style. So he's never really trying to force all of the stories into the same, not trying to make them all the same. Because for me as well, that's why there's so much like variety, so to speak, to the content of the magazine. Because you can't please everyone, but on the same side, I think variety means that more people can find something in the magazine that they like to read. I mean, it was suggested to me at the start I have a themed magazine, but to me, putting out a theme of, kind of Lovecraft type stories, and then the next theme is fantasy, like, I didn't like that idea for the magazine. I like the variety. Because when like the things that people submit, that everyone has their own unique style of writing, and I've never actually turned away a submission yet, because it's all been really good stuff.
Well, that's good. I do appreciate the sort of. I think there's a bit more of an organic nature to it in that sense when you don't theme the specific sort of issues, right? I mean, if you did one, which is, this is the Lovecraft one, and we're going to include stories from Lovecraft, and we're going to take submissions that are either Lovecraft-esque or relevant in some manner, right? Then you would get I mean, if you're not into that, you would be like, okay, well, I'm just going to skip this one, right? But here it's easier to sort of go into the entire magazine with an open mind. Because you never know what you're going to find in the next sort of chapter.
Yeah, and like I've gotten like a steady flow of submissions, but I don't have hundreds of thousands of them that I can pick and choose from as well. So that does influence my decision.
You're not.
I'm thinking maybe like a Christmas edition, but other than that, I don't have plans really for theming them.
You're not at like Women's Weekly status yet.
Hopefully I never become quite like that magazine. There's too much gossip in that.
Right. Too much what is it? It's gossip and diet tips and stuff like that, right?
I look at the cover and I feel trashy.
All right. So again, if you're interested in writing in general, if you have anything brewing, I would recommend you take a look at the submissions page on corncrakemag.com. If not, if you're interested, go over and have a look at the issues themselves. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and it's, it's a little bit of everything. It's stories from someone like Call of the Shield Maiden. There's stories from Liquid Swan, which is just original stories. Sometimes there's selections from, I think one of the issues had like Aesop's Fables, a couple of those. It's just a cozy good time, honestly, to read it. It's very relaxing, very nice. And you're doing a collaboration with Nathan Hood on King Arthur Day, right?
So I kind of collaborated with him sort of already, because Wham and Zara basically collaborated with him the other week to talk about the women of King Arthur, and I was on that podcast. So that was like what, But he actually suggested a section from Geoffrey of Monmouth, which I did print in this month's magazine as well. But yeah, I don't think I'm doing anything with him on actual King Arthur Day.
Oh, okay. I must have misunderstood the collaboration then. Well, maybe you could. I think he's interested in nothing else. Let's see here in my notes. Sorry, you were saying something?
No, I was just going to suggest, speaking of Nathan Hood, I am printing a story of his in the next magazine. This is not King Arthur related. My editor was very thrilled with it. So that magazine is out on the 3rd of June. So if anyone is interested in Nathan Hood's work, they should definitely read that one.
Right. Is there any way to subscribe to this magazine, or should they just follow on Twitter to get information about new issues?
I mean, on the front page should be a way to sign up, like on the front of the website.
There is a sign up. Yeah, never mind. Sorry, that's my fault. I didn't see
that. Will mean that you get an email. That means that you'll get an email when it comes out. As soon as I press publish, the email comes.
That's great.
Yeah, just it's worth checking the spam, because sometimes Google doesn't like websites that aren't the posh ones. And yeah, and of course, if any problems go on with the sign up, feel free to reach out, because that's how I know there's problems and I can fix them.
Of course, yeah. So, Ludwig Path, do you have any questions about English literature, Corncrake, or what's going on here?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, with Nathan Hood, he's going to do Arthur Day, King Arthur Day this month,
that's what we said.
25th. Yeah. So that's something I wanted to mention, just in case I forgot. I hope everybody tunes in for that, because many of the big names, especially in the Britosphere, is going to be there and contribute content. So it'll be exciting.
Very good. Do we have time? Yes, we do have time. I think we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about a side story, unless you have anything more you want to say in regards to Corncrake, Shield Maiden.
No, that's it. Yeah.
Subscribe, sign up, follow on Twitter. We have the links down in the description below. Otherwise, if you're listening on Twitter, the at should be, is it at Corncrake Mag?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, but yeah, they're very sad social media sites these days.
Actually, I had to look up the Corncrake, and the sound of a corncrake is incredibly annoying. It sounds like you're plucking, like if you have a metal brush and you're like plucking the strings of it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's very raspy.
Yeah, it's a very strange sound. Everyone listening, if you want a treat, go listen to The Sound of a Corncrake. You'll have something to occupy yourself with. All right. So, Ludwig Path, we have one more sort of local news story, which might be interesting for some of our viewers, in regards to election laws and, I guess, the local, or the Norwegian Libertarian Party.
Yes. I mean, as usual on right-wing Twitter, there's fear-mongering around laws, and there's been new law passed in terms of Norwegian elections. I'm not a lawyer, and I just don't have time to sit and read through the whole thing. I mean, it's a thing that you can find it on Google, and you can search it, but it's very difficult, because there's many things that are being passed there under the guise of trying to make the election system become more efficient and more robust. But of course, one of the effects that this has is that there has become a much higher threshold for small parties to participate, right? Because usually, if you want to create a new party, you need like X amount of signatures. I think it's been 1,000. But with this law, I think it changed to like maybe you need upwards of 5,000 or something like this. It was a very high number. There's a sort of percentage-based thing, and because of this, it's very likely that we're going to lose the Libertarian Party in Norway, right? I don't know how people feel about that, but that was sort of the signaling outward.
It was
The
a very
interesting thing is
small
that,
party to begin with.
Yeah, that almost nobody had heard of this. It was only I only like the Norwegian sort of tanky parties who were informed about this stuff
Because
happening.
they care about it, right?
Well, they actually care about laws and reading and stuff. I mean, like it's been a sort of thing where we've been shitting on lefties, right, for this kind of wall of text stuff, right? It's like they can't meme, and they only make these sort of wall of text things. But like with time, I've sort of begun to see more of the advantages, I guess, of doing the kind of wall of text approach, or being like this very theory heavy, because it has certain, I think, especially in terms of creating narratives for certain things, there are advantages if you're able to write kind of theory heavy or journalistically heavy articles instead of just spouting like one-liners.
It's good to support a position that you already hold, if that makes sense, right? If you're captured a hill, having like walls of text to basically justify it is good, but it doesn't really help you capturing the hill, if you get my drift.
Well, I think it's sort of good propagandistically, because you can sometimes the propagandistic, if you're making a point, and that point is actually a sort of non sequitur, if you can hide that non sequitur behind theory, it's a lot stronger, right? I mean, I'm trying to reply to somebody about like my views on like Russian narratives, but this is why I've been thinking about it, because I'm monitoring sort of both the far right and the far left, who are running more of this kind of like pro-Russia narratives on Twitter, and I actually think like the sort of far left is a lot stronger than the far right, even though they're making the same narratives. The far left will make them with sort of based in academic theory, and like say you have someone like Noam Chomsky, for example, who will show up with his like what is that guy? It's not Malthus, but that guy in the Bible who's really old. Chomsky is like 200 years old at this point, and he will and you ask him a question, and then he will just start listing off the history of the United States. Every military intervention, every bombing, every
it's like talking to Putin.
Do you want milk in your coffee, Chomsky? Well, the United States bombed Libya, and that was and it's just like this sort of every question is answered by this kind of long diatribe of either explaining kind of international law theory, or sort of the courts of international human rights, and every single instance the United States has broken this. So you can't get to the actual question before he reads out like 500 pages of every atrocity that the United States has done. I think that's a much stronger kind of line in certain ways of propaganda than doing just these kind of catchphrases that the right does. I don't know where I was going with this point.
I guess it works if you want to sort of win over. If you're looking at the playing field of democracy, it's certainly a tool that is quite effective at sort of just browbeating people with.
Yeah, I think especially if you want to win over people who see themselves as high class or as educated or something, then it's very reassuring to have a certain amount of theory.
It's always the case, right? Yeah, that's the thing, right? The lefties always sort of aspire to be higher class than they actually are. Meanwhile, every right-winger is just posting it themselves as the little like green Pepe guy, right? With his pants, right?
It's been the same thing with like the Norwegian Libertarian Party. They've run the kind of meme campaigns, right? They have this mascot that's this kind of purple Libertinus or something. It looks like the what do you call it? The Hamburglar or something? No, the Grimace from the McDonald's pantheon.
I thought it was like modeled after the Statue of Liberty or something like that.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that, but it has like the color and sort of shape of the Grimace McDonald's, I think, or maybe that was something else. But it's purple.
Maybe, yeah.
And so they have the mascot and they have the memes. Like they have this site where they talk about the libertarian meme stuff. I just want gays to get married with weed plants and machine guns and like this kind of stuff. But and you can catch a lot of people with that, and it's sort of memeable. They can repeat it.
Well,
but in the end,
I can attest to this because I was, for a very brief time, years ago, a member of the Norwegian Libertarian Party, Bloody Path. I'm not sure if you knew, but I
Yeah,
think
you've mentioned it at
yeah.
least that you
Yeah.
interacted with them.
And I went to meetings and sort of discussed with these people, which is what then turned me off of the whole thing, because the meetings quite quickly devolved into, how the roads are supposed to build, and whether or not, owning nukes for recreational purposes is theoretically okay or not. And it's like, we're just so far from any sort of, political action at this point. Why do you even care whether or not that's in our, political program? It's like, no, we have to figure out the recreational nukes question now before we get any power. And it's like, no, please. And then I left. I did not have. Someone asked, "Did you have an Asian girlfriend at the time?" No, I did not. I did not. Never have.
Well, it's yeah. So we're losing that party. I don't know if you had an article to read about it, but that's what they've been reporting on.
There was some Twitter posting about it,
on
and
Twitter
there's
that,
some Twitter posting about the leadership sort of thinking about maybe we should just shut it down because it's going nowhere, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. It's difficult to kind of get off the ground, and I think especially in somewhere like Scandinavia, getting off like a libertarian, it's just not the mood for it. I mean, they should move to Argentina or something and try to contribute to Milei or somebody like that. It seems to be other places, in like South America, that's more receptive to meme politics.
So that doesn't mean that there isn't room for libertarianism within established sort of conservative parties, I guess, but hardcore libertarianism is very hard to get off the ground here, especially because the people you will be surrounded by are essentially weirdos, right? And that was the other, that was sort of the thing that ultimately pushed me out, was that, this is never gonna get off the ground because this is just a bunch of weird dudes, right?
I mean, my perspective on it is that I've seen that with a lot of these small parties, is that they are niche communities that are centered around American ideology, really, or just American memes. So with the libertarians, it's Ron Paul, right? And it's the gold standard, and Bitcoin, and like the gay married with weed and machine guns and that kind of stuff, and it has no connection to Norwegian daily life or kind of Norwegian issues or anything we care about at all. And the only way this is going to appeal to you is if you're completely like deep into this kind of foreign politics, essentially, if you're paying attention to the Mises Institute or something like that online. It's the only hook that you have to understand anything of what they're saying. Like they'll come out and talk about, well, isn't it bad that you're being taxed all this? Everybody should be free to follow their dreams, and we should have 0% tax. What are you talking about? What are you talking like? They don't even understand it.
Yeah, the Watchmen in the Night or whatever. I think that was part of the political sort of proclamations or something. I forget what the thing is called, but yeah, they were basically referencing, which is, anyone who's been reading libertarian literature will think this is sort of canon references, right? But for everyone else, it's just like, what the hell are you talking about, my dude? Right? Which is sad, because there's a lot of good libertarian arguments that could be made against, things that are happening. It's just that when you're basically trying to distill the meme version of libertarianism into a political party, that's not going to work.
Well, I mean, it's sort of the same thing with the Alliance or the Alternative for Norway. I mentioned them previously, but it's I'm seeing like these people on Twitter trying to interact with regular Norwegians, and they'll sit and it's sort of like the guys who are voting for Israel in Eurovision, right? Who will say stuff like, okay, well, we have to go out and support Israel. We're going to go march for Israel. And then like one of these kind of NASBall types will go out and say, well, don't you understand that you can't be a Christian and Zionist at the same time? It's a contradiction in terms. And well, okay, why can't I be Christian and Zionist? Well, look at the ADL, look at what the ADL is doing. Huh? The ADL? what's the ADL? Like, they have no reference for this kind of American.
They don't even know.
Of politics at all. And so they're just living in Norway, and they have that reference, and they have no understanding of like American lobby groups and sort of these kind of replacement or these sort of memes about the guy with the measuring stick about how many % of the white population is left, and so it's completely foreign to them. Like, it's something that's going on in another country, and they're interested in what's going on in this country mainly, and with the kind of Israeli allies that they have here. So as long as they can't make any reference to anything that's going on in Norway, then it's only going to appeal to other people who are terminally inside of that space. But I mean, it will never work anyway, because I've talked about this previously. They just don't live in reality. Like, there's a certain logic to the way the system works, and they're not following that logic. They're not trying to play inside of that logic. Like Nomad talked about, if you're in South Korea, you're playing by South Korean rules, and you have to just forget about everything you know and try to understand kind of, this is how we work, with this system, or the kind of assumptions, everything you're doing. If you're coming in there with some kind of other frame, you get nowhere, essentially. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of these online types, is that they're kind of caught in the completely American frame, trying to forward that idea to somebody who just they don't get it.
You have sent me some absolutely insane sort of Twitter takes over the past couple of weeks, which get very sort of, I won't even call them like tinfoil hatty, because it's an insult to sort of call it a conspiracy theory against people who
you
actually
can share them,
discover
maybe
conspiracies. Yeah, I have to go back in our internal chat here for like a long time to be able to find this. But my point is that, some of these takes get very strange at that point. All right. Well, I don't think there's anything more to comment about this. It's a thing that's going to happen. It's probably going to wipe out this party. It didn't seem like it was doing very much productive to begin with. So hopefully they can sort of regroup in other parties, or maybe, join the bloc in the Progress Party and push for libertarianism there.
Yeah, I don't see it going anywhere there either. I mean, I think we should maybe do an episode on Bitcoin in the future, because I found a lot of accounts in the Norwegian Bitcoin sphere as well. And it's sort of the same thing, because there's been attempts now for people to buy up server farms in Norway to do Bitcoin mining, right? And they've just been blanketly denied by municipal leaders and other people in the bureaucracy. They basically say they don't want Bitcoin mining in Norway. They don't want to use Norwegian energy for that project. So, I mean, there's of course a lot of negativity around it, and I've been listening to some debates and some sort of podcasts around that stuff. And again, it's still like this complete disconnection in what kind of realities people are living in when it comes to the Bitcoiners and the other people, the economists and the technocrats that they're talking to. It's very fascinating.
Hey, you sent me. I wasn't aware that there were a bunch of Norwegian groypers. That's something you sent me as well, which has been a bit amusing. People who want to basically make Norway Catholic. I think we're a bit beyond that, unfortunately. Maybe you can do it.
Well, yeah, just share it. I mean, it's you're seeing the sort of response there where you have the actual.
Well, it's all in Norwegian,
Norway.
so it's not going to be very interesting. But my point is that there's weird sort of Nick Fuentes groyper Catholicism in a Norwegian context becomes incredibly strange.
I mean,
and you go on these guys' profiles, and it's it's Gregorian chants and tweets about drama between Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos, right? It's like, what is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange.
What's the thesis here?
Well, I think the Nick Fuentes stuff is strange even in the United States, to be honest. But in Norwegian context, is even weirder. Like, I don't understand what they're. But I mean, it's TikTok, right? That's the frame of reference they have. The followers that Nick Fuentes has are very active. There's not that many of them, but they do repost his videos, and they're able to clip his content and make these music compilations and I understand it's very appealing to a certain demographic, but again, it's like, what does it even have to do with anything? You're sitting and talking about you want to create some kind of Catholic theocracy in Norway or something where there's like hardly any Catholics, and the Catholics that actually exist, they don't even agree with your views. So
and they're probably Asian.
Yeah, it's Filipinos and Vietnamese usually.
Yeah,
I think are the represented
majority.
groups.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just very, very bizarre. I try to talk to one of them in terms of like how he, if he was actually a member, you know, some guy who called himself the Norwegian Crusader or something, he's only posting this kind of trad cath stuff. And I asked him if he was actually a member of the Catholic Church, and he said no, because he was trying to become a member. There's a lot of paperwork and stuff that you have to do. So it's sort of been, I mean, yeah, I don't even know what to make of to make of this sort of stuff. There's just this
what's
disconnect.
Annoying is that a lot of the what's annoying is that a lot of the important talking points here gets lost in insanity, right? Because when someone like this does the American thing of naming them on Twitter, right? It's no one takes it seriously, right? There's no learning, no conversation to be had about the implications and the effects of this. It's just memes at that point, right?
Well, yeah, the alliance, like the guy Hans Jørgen Lysglimt is, you know, he's going to court for some of this rhetoric. Right, it'll be interesting to pay attention to, but he's not trying to be subtle about this stuff. It's just he's also very much in this kind of America's face, where you know it's about naming them, and you don't even do it correctly. You don't do any research or anything. You just call people Jews, and if they're not, you can't prove that they're real Jews. Then they're spiritual Jews because of some other thing.
The are you Jewish question, yeah,
or there's some kind of proxy for a Jew or something. I mean, that's always the thing that they're going back to. It doesn't even have to anything to do with facts at this point. This is kind of like gutter anti-Semitism stuff. There's not a lot of political value.
Anti-Semitism has to become higher quality. Is that the thesis?
Well,
here?
The left understands this, right? The lefts are providing very high quality theoretical anti-Semitism, whereas on the right it's just this kind of like shallow memes, gutter level anti-Semitism, and they're not appealing to the left either.
We're at this point. It's just like I feel like we're a hair's breadth away from turning into Richard Spencer, and I'm not sure if I'm liking it.
Well, yeah, I think he's right about at least 50% of the things he says. The other 50%, it seems to be more kind of for personal animus stuff.
Interesting. All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour and a half, and I fear that if we talk more, we're going to get nuked again on our channel. So I think it's time that we round off here. Call of the Shield Maiden, thank you so much for joining us and highlighting your wonderful magazine. Is there anything you would like to tell people before we get out of here?
Yes, if people could, sign up on the website, that would be great.
The link should be in the description, corncrakemag.com. Of course, there's the Twitter @corncrakemag, and they can follow you on Twitter as well. I should have linked that in the description down below. You also feature on the Whammons Hour podcast.
Yeah, I'm on there from time to time, yeah.
So that's also where people can find more of you. Is that still on? That's still on Poe's channel, right?
No, Birdie
or
has
did it move? Birdie
Moments with Birdie, I think her channel name is, but it's still called Whammons Hour if you just search for it.
Ah, here it is. Yes, Whammon Hour. So that's where you can find that as well. Okay, Luddic Path.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to promote praxarchy.com again, and I'm 2 followers away from 1,000 on Twitter, so please follow. I'll be very happy if I reach that milestone.
Very good.
Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for your time.
Follow Luddic on Twitter to see. I don't know, Luddic, your Twitter feed is. It's very interesting these days. It's I don't mean this in a negative sense. It's all over the place in terms of the stuff that you end up encountering, right? It's enlightening.
Well,
Yes,
I've
that's the
been
word.
trying to follow, sometimes you try to just look up somebody who has a certain viewpoint that I'm interested in, and they interact with people, I follow them, and they interact with other people, I follow them. So I was able to escape the kind of DR silo in a sense, and then I found a bunch of other silos that I could retweet from. But it's currently there's like, what is my Twitter feed? It's like maybe 10% personal philosophical stuff. Then there's Muslim bashing, maybe 20%, 35% Russia bashing, and then the rest is anti-Semitism. So if that sounds interesting, then you could follow me.
But it's highbrow, right? All right. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter as well. Walrus in a suit is the tag. I mostly post shit post these days, as it is. I did actually report the other day that my wife did end up buying literally a dress that looks like the trad wife Wojak. And I had to sort of catch myself giving her some flack for it, because she probably wouldn't understand and she would call me terminally online. So Last Things retweeted and said that we're all going to make it. So there's hope. You can get the trad wife dress wife as well. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for watching, whether you're listening on YouTube and on Twitter. As I said at the start, next week we will not be streaming because I'm away on holiday. But we should be back as usual the week after that. And until then, I wish you a good evening and a good weekend. Bye-bye.
No, I forgot, right?